Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I am Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas. Joined as always by former NFL Brian Baradas. He's also a Super Bowl winner. I shouldn't just leave it at former NFL scout. That is a Super Bowl winner right there that you're talking to. He is also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. And he is the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And he is your resident film expert and draft expert, all things here that I love the star. Brian Broaddus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Robert. How was that plane flight home for you?
You know, I think you and I share a healthy fear of the Wright brothers' invention.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of flying, and it was great. You get on the plane, you get a victory, you're heading home, everybody's in a good mood. But man, I'll tell you what, when I get on that plane, I'm looking at all sorts of weird statistics. Like, man, should we only be 6,000 feet in the air 3 minutes after takeoff? I feel like we should be higher by this point. And then it's, why did the little American Airlines track that tells us, how long we have to go? Why all of a sudden is this thing like show me tracking back to Cleveland? Are we diverting back to Cleveland? Did something happen? So nothing happens. It's always something totally fine. But in my head in those moments, I go, we're done here. We're done for.
Who do you have the honor? Who has the honor of sitting next to you on these flights? By the way,
it varies on every flight. This past one, it was Danny Miles.
Danny Miles. There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
And so we were chatting things up a little bit, and then I've got right behind me, I had David Bruzy from Cowboys PR. So those.
There you go. He was listening in on your conversation. Is what he was doing.
He's wanting to keep an eye on me. He's like,
for sure.
I got an eye on you. No,
Smart.
David is great. I do love David. So we did get a Cowboys victory. That's great. Yeah. We will have a lot to talk about there. Before we get into that breakdown, obviously, we're going to need to talk about the news that occurred before kickoff, and that is the Cowboys did get their extension done with Dak Prescott. It is a 4-year deal. It averages $60 million per season. It breaks all the records. It is the most annual salary. It is the most guaranteed money by $1 million over Deshaun Watson, and it is the most signing bonus ever doled out to any player ever. Dak ends up $60 a year for $240 million over 4 years. With the deal he has now, that's a 5-year contract essentially. There's some cap management void years on the back end of this thing that don't really apply to the actual contract length, but just some accounting tricks there. But Brian, your reaction, I guess, to the deal getting done, the investment they decided to make, anything that it said to you, were you surprised that they went ahead and got something done without seeing him do it another year? Are you surprised that they said, all right, we're gonna pay this price right here? Are you surprised Dak was willing to do something before the season? What were your general takeaways on the deal?
Not that I'm a huge cap expert. I mean, the numbers scare me. That's why I'm grateful that I'm in journalism. I guess that we call it, what we do is journalism for us. But, there's a lot of smart guys and gals that do this for a living. I've never seen a contract negotiation that was more confusing than this one. And I mean that in a way that, we didn't have all the the parameters and all the things, the numbers and everything that probably were involved. I've never seen so much misinformation, posturing, back and forth. Do I want to be here? Do I not want to be here? Does Jerry Jones think this is our guy? I heard so many different things. And there was a side of me that I really believed that it wasn't going to get done. I mean, do I want him to get it done? Sure. Because you're talking to a guy for 3 years that had no quarterback. Had no quarterback. We're drafting baseball players and signing baseball players. And, bad on our part. And I just think that, there was a side of me that believed that this thing can maybe it run its course. That maybe it run its course with the owner, general manager. Maybe it run the course with the quarterback himself.
Yeah.
And that's where I was, the longer this thing went, the more that I thought this cat's about to be in Las Vegas Raider. This cat's about to be a New York football giant. This cat's about to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, just name anybody,
Yeah.
Anybody. I mean, I know the Buccaneers have got their guy that they feel good about, but, Baker Mayfield. But everybody on their teams would love to have Dak Prescott as their quarterback.
Sure.
So this one wasn't smooth. It wasn't easy unless the negotiations really got serious in week one. If and I know guys like Adam Pacifica and Todd Williams and Stephen Jones and Todd France, all the guys and gals that worked on this one. I wonder if there was a lot of like, okay, we'll wait, we'll keep waiting. Now then they get serious about. I just wonder, because it was kind of what we thought it might be, right? Weren't we looking at $60 million? And, that we knew there was going to be a massive signing bonus and there were going to be some massive guarantees. And I just wonder in the last week if they really got this thing done. If they just sat down and rolled up their sleeves and said, you know what, let's get it done. And that's, I mean, I felt like the possibility of it being done was when we interviewed Stephen Jones on Friday, and you guys interviewed Jerry Jones on Friday as well.
Or KNC,
Or KNC, excuse me. When KNC, you guys have him tomorrow, right? You
yes,
Jerry
Tuesday.
Tomorrow.
When this
Tuesday.
will drop on Tuesday.
This will drop on
Tuesday morning.
So there'll be some great questions. Listen to 105.3 The Fan. Jerry, I'm sure these guys, Sean Sharif and Bobby Belt and others will ask, and RJ Choppy will ask really good questions of him tomorrow about how this got done. But I wonder if it really was we'll talk about this, that, going back and forth, but nothing significant until this last week. But when Jerry didn't say he didn't want to comment about anything with KNC, and then Steven didn't want to comment with us about that, and they went kind of silent, I said, okay, they're getting serious about this deal. This has got a shot. And even then I was like, okay, well, maybe it's got a shot that the Cowboys think it has a shot. And you and I have talked about this, that the perception was maybe the Cowboys thought differently of the deal than Dak's people thought.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The Dallas thought maybe they were closer than Dak and them thought they were.
And I still wondered. I think the bottom line was Dak Prescott wanted to be here. As much as in maybe the deciding factor was the money. Maybe the money, it's such a, if you ask people what they thought the deciding factor was, they'll tell you the money. The money's what swung this deal.
Do you think some of the confusion, so it feels like...
Am I making sense by all this?
No, I think you are. The side that had to say yes was the Cowboys. A lot of times in a negotiation, the player's the one who has to say yes.
Right.
Like, all right, fine, I can do that. Like, here's the offer, fine, I'll do it. I wonder if part of that... Jory Epstein had a really good article out there about how everything broke down. And Dak said when they were doing their Saturday morning kind of walk-through practice before they get on the plane, that Dak had said that Jerry had come up to him and said, hey, have you talked to anybody in your representation in the last 12 to 24 hours?
Yeah.
And he's like, nope. So he reached out to his agent afterwards, and his agent told him not close. And so Dak said he got on the plane on Saturday thinking, okay, probably going to play under my deal then.
Right.
And for it to get done the next day, what that tells me is I wonder if the reason why we heard some of this communication and this confusion is because the Cowboys were posturing in this negotiation, leaving the impression with Dak and his side that we're not close. And in reality, the Cowboys knew they were getting closer to just saying, yes, okay, fine. And that Dak, and that in that moment, on Saturday morning, Todd France thought we're not close because they haven't said anything that indicates they're close. And in reality, Jerry in his head is thinking, I'm about to say yes to the deal. And that
he's about to tell Steven and Adam and Todd Williams to button this thing up. Yeah. And and good for Dak for getting it done the way he did. And Jerry just came to the realization that like maybe there were some doubts. And then, Jerry has the opportunity to sleep on it and says, no, we need to get this damn done. The season's about to start. We need to get this done. And so, that's a big thing. It's a big thing for big thing for Dak. It's a big thing for his agent. It's a big thing for the Cowboys. That they got that done. But I just wonder, like I said, when Dak, obviously he wanted to be here. And I say it again because there was that side of me that kind of believed that maybe he didn't want to be here. Maybe he was tired of waking up every morning and watching ESPN, sling arrows at him. Maybe
I'll say specifically, I think for clarification, Brent, I think he wanted to be here. I think what had changed was he no longer felt he needed to be here. And I think in the past he felt like he needed to be here.
Right.
Now I want to be here.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I'm not going to sacrifice certain things, at the door. And so I don't need to be here any longer. I think that's where that kind of had shifted. I think he did shift in a way.
Yeah. Well, good for him. Good for the organization. Seems like when we saw, pictures of the signing today that everybody, the family was in the room and Dak was, getting his contract taken care of. So, good for him. And now the pressure comes because it's a very polarizing player when you look at how it, goes forward. There's 50% of the people, I believe, that probably feel like this is a terrible idea. And there's 50% of the people that are like, hey, let's go forward here. And, but now it's about, playoff success and, let me ask you this, Bobby, and maybe I'm being too over the top with this. Is his legacy on the line here now that he signed this contract with the Cowboys?
Yeah, in terms of like his professional, like his career legacy is absolutely going to be determined, I think, over the next 4 years. Because he gets to the end of this 4-year deal or the 4-year extension. We're talking about that's year 13 at that point. Yeah, guys are pretty much who they're going to be. So, this is, I think this is, around the time where it's going to make it or break it for him.
Is this going to be the time, the next 4 or 5 years, is this going to be where we look at Dak Prescott as, wow, this was money well spent? Or do we look at it as, boy, this is the Tony Romo, the non-championship type quarterback,
Do you only... so I guess it just depends. Like, for instance, I viewed it as Tony Romo, regardless of ever winning a Super Bowl, the times you signed Tony Romo, that was money well spent because I think he got you the best shot to do it.
Right.
It's easy to look back and say, well, did it or did it happen? In that sense, yeah, you've got to evaluate it in that sense. But I think that when you just look at it from given the information that you had, what was the right move? And I think given the information the Cowboys have, the right move was you need to extend Dak. That's how I looked at it.
I know I was on radio and they were asking me, and I said, I was saying, I know people think I'm really critical and don't like Dak. That's not true at all. I know we had a discussion on our show, and I was one of the ones that said I would sign him because I've lived through not having a quarterback. I've lived through that. But I just wonder, I hope it ends well for everybody here. I hope it, history right now, and it's not a small sample size. It's, we've got a lot of years here, and growing up a Cowboy fan and going to games, they measure you here on championships. And unfair, sure, but that's what this history of this organization is. It's playoff success, it's championships, and that's how these quarterbacks are measured. And Dak has been, in a lot of ways, God sent for the Cowboys and what he was able to do. But these next 4 or 5 years will tell you whether, he's that he could be talked about with the Aikmans and the Staubachs, and to an extent, the Don Merediths who went to NFL championship games, that kind of stuff.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian. The Cowboys. Let's move to the actual football now. The Cowboys did get their first victory of the season on Sunday, 33-17 over the Cleveland Browns. And there are a number of different angles we could take on this, and I'll ask you about some specific players, and we'll kind of get some thoughts on what we saw looking back at the film. But before we get to that, kind of general themes or overarching takeaways for you coming out of this one?
I still believe that Mike Zimmer can save Mike McCarthy's job.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. I believe that Mike Zimmer, given the opportunity with the talent that they have on this roster, you got a real chance to have a very good defense with this guy, because he's going to be attention to detail. He is going to be focused. He's going to have his players ready. He's not going to leave anything to chance. He's going to be creative when he needs to be creative. Yes, it was a busted up offensive line. It was a quarterback that looks broken, but he took advantage of that. And even, I believe, even if Cleveland had had their offensive lineman, I think Dallas had a really good game plan here. I think they had a really good game plan, and they would have made it tough. Now, maybe the score would have been a lot closer, but I feel like that I really do like what Mike did with his personnel. I think he has to be excited about the way they played for him. He started a rookie corner. He started a corner who was coming off a major knee injury and looked outstanding. His linebacker room that they completely revamped looked really good. Overshown, basically a rookie, playing his first opportunity, looked really good. Heck, they got the defensive line. He moved guys around. He put guys on the same side. He created mismatch opportunities. I'm really, really super happy for Mike. Texted him after the game and told him, hey, congratulations. And he said, thanks, long way to go, kind of a thing. But I think for Act 1, it was really, really good defensively. First half of the offense, I thought there was some creativity with trying to run the football, the pulling, the traps, the draws, those types of things I thought had some success to them. I felt like that maybe that Guyton was a little bit better as a run blocker than he was a pass blocker. I thought Beebe was a better pass blocker than he was a run blocker. And Terrence Steele looked like the Terrence Steele of old playing football. And, he gave up the one sack. It was a hard pressure that, he just couldn't. That's Terrence Steele. He's going to have one a game where he just does not get in front of the guy and it's going to give up something. Maybe he'll give up a hit or a pressure, and this time he gave up a sack. But overall, I think you have to feel good about the way that the line played, because the biggest question marks were how were the young guys going to play. And I felt like that they showed up. And that first half, I thought Mike McCarthy was in his bag calling the game. The quarterback looked like he was ready. The blitzes that he handles, he's always going to play well when it's pressured. And there were a couple times where they had some busts. I think they were busts when you watch the tape. The touchdown, I think they had enough guys to block the blitzer, and maybe they didn't get the call relayed and it free rusher right up the middle. That doesn't seem accurate, but Dak was able to stand in there, throw the ball, get Cooks on the route. They got the matchup they absolutely wanted against Thornhill. Thornhill never even moved, so they created some opportunities there. I think defense well on its way to looking like it needs to be. Offense, first half good, second half needs a lot of work. Special teams, too many penalties, but you get the punt return. So good for them on that way. They could have had a kickoff return. The opening kickoff of the game could have been a touchdown if, in fact, that Wanye Thomas would have got his block or would have been able to sustain his block. So good things on all around, but I do think there's some things clearly on offense in the second half they needed to improve on.
Yeah, the most frustrating thing for me to come out of this game, which, I mean, there wasn't a lot. It's you're not going to apologize for a 16-point victory on the road against a playoff team. But I think the biggest thing for me was just you're waiting around for that. Okay, where's the put them away drive? Like, you just need one. Just give me one put them away drive in the second half. And They never put it together. As much as Cleveland struggled in the first half offensively, 54 yards, 1 first down, 0 for 5 or 0 for 6 on third down. Dallas was the same team in the second half. Dallas got 49 yards of offense, fewer than Cleveland got in the first half. They had 2 first downs instead of 1, and they went 0 for 5 on third down instead of 0 for 6. So a lot of different struggles there. I know there have been some speculation from folks that went, they were just, they were in the lead. They were taking their foot off the gas. Fourth quarter, maybe, but there were some drives there where I saw they were trying to make some things happen, and they weren't able to do it.
Yeah,
Cleveland was playing better defense in the second half.
They did, and Cleveland wasn't missing any, starters. Like their offense was completely, was decimated. I'm not taking anything away from the Cowboy win. I know people are coming on here, and they're going, they're going to go, well, Dan Broadish, your wet blanket guy. No, they've got to be better. They've got, they have got to be better on. To me, the second, and this is where I think you go back, and you remember there were times where Mike McCarthy had problems with Kellen Moore because Kellen Moore wanted to keep his foot on the gas. And Mike McCarthy's like, sometimes you just got to, and maybe Mike was looking just for a way to finish this game. But this could have been one of those games where you had Cleveland down, and offensively, their offense wasn't going to do anything. And now you're in a situation, I'm not talking about run it 3 straight times into the line and hope for the best. But a little bit, you had some creativity, run, waggle, run, waggle, run. You kind of get into your offense. They had some drives. They had a drive where Mike was in it, where they were able to complete some passes. They ran the ball effectively. They finished drive. To me, the second half needed to be about, okay, let's go see if we can have that drive that you're talking about. Fortunately, they got the punt return. And their defense made 2 stops. Defense made 2 stops in the second half on fourth down that gave them field goals. That to me, that's where you kind of like in that mode of, okay, let's in the second half, let's see if we could load this thing up with, and maybe it's not all about Zeke. Maybe use all 3. Zeke a couple of carries, Dowdle a couple of carries, Vaughn a couple of carries, Dowdle a few more carries, Vaughn a couple of carries, Zeke back. As you got closer, I was hoping there would be that drive where they were just killing clock, getting chunks of yards, allowing their offensive line to build some, against a good defensive line, allow them to potentially have some success and feel good about the running game coming out of there. If I've said this I've been on platforms all day today, and the one thing I said is with Zeke's game, that 10 carries, the 40-yard stuff, if you give me that in the second half, I would have felt pretty good about that. The fact in the second half, they did nothing. They did nothing. And there's going to be games where you're going to need to be better than nothing, and maybe everybody's saying, Broadus, the game was in hand. But take the opportunity to get your team in a mindset mode of. I watched the Houston Texans yesterday, Bobby. I don't know if you saw the Texans play the Colts at all.
Saw a little, yeah.
The end of that football game. Joe Mixon was a new addition to the Houston Texans. What did they do to the Indianapolis Colts at the end of that game? They grinded them down with Joe Mixon to finish that game off. And you could see the emotion. You could see the emotion of their staff when that thing was over, when they got that final first down. Now you're looking at that. If you're the Houston Texans, you're going, all right, tough game, 2-point game. We're kind of on the ropes here right now. Need a big drive. What do? They went to a guy who hadn't been with him the whole year until this summer, and boom, there you go. Finish the game off. I wish Dallas had gone in and done something like that. At least killed a big chunk of that game instead of pass and punt. You gave us the numbers. Yesterday was an opportunity. I think that they maybe missed an opportunity to show a little toughness in this football game.
Were you surprised? This is probably. They were having success. They didn't need to dive into too much. I think it was Trayvon Diggs' postgame basically said, we got into like 5% of what Zim has in the games here. But like we didn't have to get into too much here.
Boy, it was
Are you surprised, I guess, that Micah specifically, after all the talk about where he could be, and like, man, he might play essentially safety at times. It felt like a lot of this game was just, hey, you know what? Stand him up on the edge, left or right side, 2-point stance, and we're gonna run him this way. And that there wasn't a whole lot of necessarily in the A gap and standing up. And, it felt like it was a little bit more. Did you think that was just a case of, hey, we've got this handled right here. We don't need to get into anything too deep here because we're having a lot of success with this.
He moved him around.
No, I know, moved him around, but like
he was in A gap. They went
sure.
A gap with him. They went. There was a couple of their best rushes that they were able to get pressure and a sack on was Tank playing the left end, Osa playing the 3, Micah walking down into the as a 3, and then kneeling on the outside. And then they had some rushes where they put Micah on the outside next to Tank. And then what did they do? They had a blitz where they got a sack where Kendrick's sack was Micah drop, Tank drop, and they blitzed the slot with Lewis. They blitzed Kendricks inside. It was like the old fire zone. So yeah, I mean it wasn't just outside. I mean there was some not as
straight rushes. No, not as straight rushes. I'm talking about pre-snap looks. Like there was not nearly as much of Micah, at least in training camp that I saw.
Well, to me, I disagree with you on this. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
And that's fine. That's what I'm trying to say here is that I'm talking about just in general some of the looks in terms of where he was lined up. Micah was talking about he would line up. I'm not talking about where he ended up rushing or things. And he did have some times where he was lining up A gap, but the vast majority was lining up outside, whether it be even if it's on Tank's side. The lineup was like where he was standing pre-snap. There wasn't nearly as much standing like directly in the A gap and dropping back or whatever. It's some of the stuff that he was talking about during the week that he was going to be doing. And that's fine if you see it different. It's just,
I do. I see it a lot different. I see it a lot different because when you watch it, and I was, I made a point to watch end zone copy of it because I wanted to see everywhere that he was. And I wanted to see, was it A gap and then end up in the C, that kind of stuff. There were some twist stunts and things like that. I think that there were times when you watch this where with the one example I gave you where they put Tank and him on the same side, on the opposite side, they had an offense. They had their guard was Batonia was blocking air. They weren't blocking anybody. They didn't even slide that direction. I mean, I think that Zimmer affected this with alignment and with some of the things that he showed in that game. He had Micah moving around. He had Tank moving around. He had Golston moving around. The blitzes he brought with the linebackers. I think there was a lot to what he was.
Yeah, not that it's
doing.
Simplified. Not that it's simplified at all. That it's. I don't think that he was nearly, at least again, the way Micah talked about it. Micah talked about it during the week, said that in these personnel packages, said basically, I'm going to be lined up sometimes in the slot. I'm going to be lined up essentially as safety. I'm going to be lined up over like
but I'm just saying across in the front 7, he was lined up in a lot of different spots. I'm sorry if I misunderstood you if you're saying slot and safety and all that. No. That's not the case. That was not the case in this game.
Yeah, and so
but we could get to that. Yeah, we could absolutely
all
get
that to say, just coming around to that, I'm saying, do you think, because that's a long way to get around to it, but basically what I'm saying is that with Micah talking like that, do you think that was posturing or something like that, or do you think that was
No,
Zimmer,
I think they're really going to do that.
I'm saying, do you think that was Zimmer them saying we did not need to tap into any of that in this game? Like it was just not part of the game plan. We didn't need to dip into these personnel packages. Same way that I think it was Diggs who said, we've got about 50 different calls we can get into, and we used about 3 of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you look how they played, he played 70% of this game, he played zone coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a far cry different from where we saw the single high, man coverage, safety, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is Zim, he did. I mean, if he used only a quarter of the things that he did in this game to win the game the way they did and be as dominant as they did, well, then this defense has got a chance to be even better if that's the case.
Before we get to some listener questions, I'm curious about on the offensive side of the ball, in general, how you felt Ezekiel Elliott looked and how he played.
Yeah, I think the first half, one of his big runs was a draw. They got a pin play. They got there were times where I think BB needs to be better with some second level stuff. And if you don't block Koromora, the linebacker, he's going to make a million tackles. And I think they got into some situations where they didn't get some guys secured. And then when they got guys secured, the one time they get second level block, they get everything secured. And then all of a sudden Dowdle runs it into like he was closing his eyes. He just ran into, he got tackled where if he makes a cut behind BB, they're gonna have a big gain. And I think that, with Zeke, the second half was just non-existent in the running game. And I don't know how committed they were really trying to be to running the football, So you saw the traps, you saw pulls, you saw the jet sweeps. You saw, there were things that they were trying to do to get to the running game or to help the running game. Zeke, much better than I thought he would be. I would be totally okay if Zeke is really like their third down guy. His blitz pickup was really, really good. He caught the ball on the screen. He caught a couple of different passes. He ran tough when he had to run tough. I just don't think Zeke's explosive anymore when it comes to, it's nice to see him jump over and the old Zeke and stuff for 5 yards. That's good. He looked fresh that way. But they're going to need to run the football better. They are going to need to find a way to, when it gets tough, for them to have some positive plays. Not, negative play or 0 play or 2-yard play or 3-yard play. They're going to need, when that play gets blocked right, they can't have Rico Dowdle running in there into the lineman's back and getting 3 or 4 yards when it could have been a bigger gain.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time to go to our Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag, where we get our listeners' thoughts, questions, comments, find out what they want to talk about. First question here from Stacy. She says, what is the biggest thing to be optimistic about after the first game? She, for her say, she thinks it's the defense is the real deal and Mike Zimmer may end up being better for these guys than Dan Quinn. Brian, what's your most optimistic takeaway from this one?
I'm optimistic, though. I think Stacy is onto something about the defense. I think these two rookie linemen are going to be really good. I mean, and I know that it was a fight for survival for at times with Guyton out there, but that was you were playing with fire out there, and he had the one play where he gave up the sack and he gave up some pressures, but he looked comfortable run blocking. He'll get better as a pass blocker. I think with BB, the pass blocking was outstanding. The snaps were good. We didn't see any errant ones or problems that way. He'll get better with the calls. I'm encouraged by this offensive line. I'm encouraged by Steele and the way he played. Hopefully that can, maintain more of that going forward. But I'm encouraged by that group. The defense, to me, the defense is an easy one to talk about. But you look at these offensive linemen, they've got a chance to grow as this thing goes along.
Yeah, I think, obviously the defense is a big positive. Specifically, though, I think it's the linebackers. They're just those guys, Overshown and Kendricks, the way that they play.
Carson, I know they picked on him a little bit, but Carson
they had to pick on Carson. It's like they didn't have an option, because Diggs was playing so well. When I thought Diggs' tape that's about as good as I've seen him play in terms of just discipline and coverage in a long time. And he didn't look like he had any effects. I think it was almost just like, well, we can't throw it over here, so this is our best option. I thought Carson, though, I think, acquitted himself nicely overall. I thought he played really well. And
I wish he was a little closer, a little bit more of a drive on that goal line, the pass that went to Judy for the touchdown.
Yeah, and was
played a little bit on his heels there, and he's got to read that quicker. He's worried about the ball being a fade or something like that, and him having to deal with that. But you see that out, man. You got to drive that thing, and he kind of got caught back on it a little bit.
And I think I think it was the first throw to Cooper. He took a little bit of a funny angle on him.
He did take a funny angle, yeah.
And
he went for the pick. It looked like.
Yeah, and it was weird. It's like he was trying to cut that angle, and then he changed his mind in the middle of it or something. It's like, oh no, yeah. And so he was a little late on that, but overall, I think played nice.
Nice, yeah.
But and by the way, to Stacey's point, because I know she said I think Mike Zimmer may end up being better for these guys than Dan Quinn was, and then she put Hides. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm hiding from this take. Like, I know it's controversial, but I wouldn't say I disagree with that, Stacey. I would say this is that I think Zimmer is the right guy for these players in this moment. Like a lot of these players, Dan Quinn was the right guy for them 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that they've reached a point and they've progressed to a point where, hey, today DQ kind of got all he could out of them. And that's not a criticism of DQ. This is just what he had maxed them out and I think had maxed out the effectiveness here. And now a new voice is something that can be valuable and a different kind of style.
I'll tell you something too, real quick, to be encouraged by is every time you get to the other team's logo at midfield, there's a chance for 3 points.
Yeah.
There's going to be games. There's going to be games where all of a sudden you don't have a lot of time on the clock and you're down 2 and you get one completion and you stop the clock and that son of a gun trots out there and knocks one home from 67 yards. That's what that right there is got to make yourself feel good.
Next question here from Coach Williams. He said, even though the Cowboys looked good on defense yesterday versus the Browns, if Zimmer thinks the defense can be better or even elite, do you see Dallas making any sort of a bold trade before the deadline? Brian, was there anything that you saw out there on that defense that you're like, man, maybe you still need to upgrade this?
No, I think, and I appreciate. I'm always open for trades and opportunities, bold trades. If I'm making a bold trade, it might be for a running back. It might be. I'm going to say this as somebody that covers the Cowboys. And if I was a fan of the Cowboys, and I am a fan, I shouldn't say I'm a fan of. I want to see the team do well. There's a lot of great people over there, and I want the fans to experience that. I'm honestly worried what Saquon Barkley's about to do for Philadelphia. I really am. My biggest fear is Saquon Barkley turns into Christian McCaffrey when it comes to his health being okay and he doesn't miss games. The one thing that you always saw with him was that he was going to miss games.
Not that you're concerned.
I'm not cheering.
That,
I'm not
he's healthy.
cheering.
Yeah, not that at all. Not like that.
If he turns into if his health maintains through the year, that is going to be a solid pickup for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I will be very, very jealous if all of a sudden they're handing him the ball and it's 4, 5, 6 yards, maybe a 11-yard touchdown run or that kind of thing.
I think if you see any sort of a trade on defense, I think that means somebody got hurt is probably what that means for the Cowboys. That maybe their depth gets tested and they end up having to go make a move. You mentioned running back there. I guess remains to be seen. Again, there was, the offense kind of stalled out in the second half. There's still going to be questions for some people about what is Tolbert as the third receiver until they see it a little bit more. He had one catch yesterday, I think, for 12 yards. And so, they could potentially look at things as they go along and just say, we need to maybe add another receiver to this room if we feel like our guys aren't coming along the way that we want them to. But I think running back is probably the better bet at this point. Next question for Marcus Mitchell. What do the Cowboys get back for Trey Lance this season when they trade him? If they trade him, obviously. But Brian, that was one of my first thoughts when the deal got done was I thought, all right, if it's me in the next 6 weeks,
agent, right?
Yeah. So for me,
they're saying trade him at the deadline. Is that what they're doing?
So and that was my thought. For me, as soon as the Dak deal got done, it's like, all right, sometime in the next 6 weeks, see if you can get something. Because I mean, you didn't trade for Trey Lance to upgrade the backup quarterback room. You just come off of winning 5 games with Cooper Rush. You brought him in here as a lotto ticket, and the lotto ticket hasn't hit necessarily the way you want it to. I wouldn't imagine he's going to be re-signed here. And so to me, it is like, if it's even a conditional 7th that with playing time can get you up to a 6th or something, I think you got to see if you can recoup something.
Who would you feel better about backing up Dak next year, 25?
At this point, Rush probably.
Okay.
That's where, and I'm sure, I'm guessing you feel like Lance makes you more.
I would feel like Lance because to me, I mean, I'm betting on a guy that I feel like we'll see if he develops as a passer. And I know there's some questions about that. I just know talking to some coordinators and stuff, I asked about who would you hate to prepare against. And maybe Rush would be a guy you'd hate to prepare against because he's now throwing the ball down the field. But I'm thinking the guy you might be able to re-sign is you're going to probably have a better chance of re-signing Rush than you would Lance, right? Is it going to be, how do you feel that's going to play?
Say it again. You were kind of buffering for me on mine. What was it about Lance?
Do you feel like that who would be easier to resign, Lance or Rush?
Rush, because I think there's probably some people out there still who think I can maybe make those traits work. Okay. And to me, I wouldn't just say I want to roll with Rush and then that's it. I would say I want to roll with Rush and then throw another dart at a quarterback in the 6th round next year or something. Yeah. But to me, it's like, if you're going to get anything, just do something to recoup a little bit of that 4th that you lost when you went and made the move. I don't know that they will do that.
I don't think they will, but
I don't think it's any sort of a certainty. Like when they say when the Cowboys trade him, that's what I would do. I don't think that they necessarily think about it the same sort of way, though. Next question here let's go with a question from Cam. Would you like to see more screenplays and wide runs from Zeke? No more running straight power. What do you think about that, Brian?
You're asking a lot of a back that can't run to the outside much. I know he bounced that one run for 5. He looked pretty fresh on that. Like the idea of screens. I'm a big screen guy. I think that's one of Zeke's strengths, actually, that his ability to kind of get up in the line, sneak outside, catch the football, and turn. I would be all for that. You need Zeke going straight ahead. You don't need Zeke going sideways. I don't think that's his game. I think catch the ball, get upfield, or hand the ball to him, let him make the cut, get the 4 or 5 yards if you can get it. Maybe you pop a run, get an 8 like they did on the draw where they got guys pinned. If Ferguson would have got his block, it probably been a little bit of a longer run. But yeah, I think things attacking the line of scrimmage is probably the best thing for Zeke. I don't think the outside stuff is really his forte. Not at this point in his career.
I would agree. I thought Zeke played well yesterday. I think it was a
positive
overall.
He did.
I thought it was a positive game for Zeke.
Yeah,
I think that I think some of the maybe Zeke's found the fountain of youth here kind of takes. It's like, no, there's still limitations there, and I still think he doesn't hit the hole quite as quickly as you want. And those issues are still going to be present at the age that he is. And Zeke said it himself yesterday. They were like, "Is this as good as you've felt in a long time?" And he was like, "It's week 1." Yeah, I usually feel pretty good week 1. That's when you're fresh. You've had some time away. Last question here from Rowdy B. Brian, how well did the new interior defensive tackles play against the Browns?
What I saw was they had a good little rotation going. Mozzie was fine. I know he's not new, but I'll just say Mozzie played. Mozzie gave you something for the plays he was in there. Felt he was good early. And then as it kind of wore on, he wasn't a detriment. He wasn't a minus player. He didn't get turned. He didn't get washed.
His get-off was better in this game than it
usually
and
much better. The first 3 or 4 snaps it was. And then there was a couple times where I thought he was a little late. But overall, though, I'd have to give him some high marks from that. Linval Joseph can be a very, very hard guy to move. I kind of want Phillips to be more of a guy that I saw in Buffalo. I saw a guy in Buffalo that I felt like as a 3 technique was a little bit more of an up-the-field player, a little bit more explosive, a little bit more of got some wiggle to him. I want to see some of that. Those were 2 hard guys to move. I think that they both played like 12 plays, 14 plays, something right around there. I think more Phillips for me. Linval Joseph, like I say, it was okay. There was nothing that really just said, oh, wow, he was just dominant. Their center, Posick, is not a very powerful guy or doesn't handle power very well. And I thought they did a pretty good job of those inside guys. But I just, if I could get more from Phillips, because I've seen him be a very productive player as a pass rusher and as a run defender. And maybe he'll get more opportunities here as we go along.
That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We are in season now. That means 3 episodes a week. So this is the first. We'll have 2 more for you this week. We got the New Orleans Saints coming to AT&T Stadium for the first game at AT&T Stadium of the year, the home opener for the Dallas Cowboys this weekend. And then after that is the Baltimore Ravens. But pretty much contract talk is in the rearview mirror now. It's all about football. And so we'll have a couple more episodes for this week. Some updates on Jake Ferguson, who is week to week, it sounds like at this point. And so we'll have updates on his health as we progress. But for Brian Broaddus, I'm Bob Belt. Thanks so much for joining us. We will talk to you guys again later.
Hey,
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.